Welcome to the Numerology Podcast. I'm your host, Novalee Wilder. I'm a professional numerologist and writer. And in this podcast, we're just going to nerd out, which means we're going to talk names, we're going to talk numbers, numerology, astrology, the connections between the different esoteric fields. We'll do case studies and so much more. Today's episode is about the 12 laws of the universe, the 12 spiritual laws. Now, maybe there are less laws, maybe there are actually more. We could also call them the 12 guiding principles of our world. They have created multiple books and schools of thought. And I want to say that before we get into this, there is a real mix-up sometimes for people and the understanding of it. If you take any of these laws to mean that the privilege you were born with, in any way, maybe you are white, maybe you are able-bodied, maybe you are neurotypical, whatever. If you feel like any of these means that you can then just dismiss people or not help people or not see the suffering of other people as something you could help or ease, then you're not understanding the laws at all. And I feel like I want to talk about this because sometimes in spiritual circles and working with spiritual stuff, people can have a tendency to be like, I choose to be born in this way and everything afforded to me is just natural, and you chose to be born in that way and that's just your karma or what you chose, and I'm just gonna ignore your life or ignore your struggle. And that's just simply not how I see the world or how I use the spiritual laws. So even though some people read these laws in a way where like all is one, and they dismiss certain political or cultural or other aspects of life and then just decide to say like, we are all one, let's not fight. I'm like, no. Let's get clear on the injustices in the world and let's work to eradicate them. Let's lift up the voices of the marginalized and let's understand that just because we are born in any kind of privileged situation does not mean that we don't have a responsibility to wake up and change the world so everyone born into it are born into a more just and equal space. Yes, that was the beginning rant. Welcome to the Numerology Podcast. Maybe you're not used to me sharing this, but I feel like so many people misunderstand the spiritual laws or use them in a misguided way, so I had to add that in there. Let's start with the 12 spiritual laws. It can be helpful to look at the laws as steps on a ladder to understanding. Every law builds on the previous one and is expanded upon in the next one. The very first law is the law of divine oneness. This is the law of one, the law that all the others rest upon. This law states that we are all connected through creation. Every single atom inside of you is connected in some way, shape, or form to the rest of the universe you move through. This is the foundation of many religions, and it implies that all the love you send out comes right back, and that all the harm you do to yourself or others also returns to you. As we are all one, the law points to the divinity and power in each of us to change and influence the world with even the smallest gesture. And also, if you harm anything in this universe, you harm yourself. The second law is the law of vibration. Everything in the universe has a frequency and vibration. Nothing ever stands still, as everything is either being pushed away or pulled towards something. Like attracts like, that's the fourth law. So if you want to attract anything, you need to understand and match the vibration of it. This shows up in very basic ways, like how if you complain a lot, you'll find friends who'll join in your misery. Vibrations are also in our names and in our birthday, and the law of vibration is the basis of astrology and numerology and other esoteric sciences. The third law is the law of correspondence, or the law of repeating patterns. So this law takes the law of vibration one step further. Remember I said you can see the laws as steps on a ladder. So the law of vibration goes one step further now, and it says that the patterns in our lives are created in our thoughts. There is a quote by Lao Tzu that points to this. He says, "Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character because it becomes your destiny." He is pointing to the fact that your future is found in the patterns you repeat or disrupt every day. Patterns of all kinds will repeat themselves through families unless you decide to change them. When you change the pattern for yourself, you can in effect, this is law of one, change the world. So also when people say you want peace in the world, find peace in yourself, find peace in your family. Lots of us want to change the world and we also want to change ourselves, but we forget that the most immediate thing we can change is our relationship to other people and how we deal with that. Let's move on to the law of attraction. You probably heard about this one. So this is the law of vibration in action. Many people get scared by the notion that bad thoughts or low vibration will somehow destroy their life because they're unaware. But this law is not a punishment. It's just a very clear mirror of our self-worth and mindset. You are surrounded by the outcome of decisions you've made in the past, and you're fully capable of making other decisions and attracting a different set of circumstances. When people say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, they're kind of talking about this thing. You have to change your patterns to experience something else. You also, on a higher level, if you have a level of privilege, you have to change the patterns in the world. You have to influence the patterns in the world if you want to see a different outcome for the people around you, your community, what have you. The next law is the law of inspired action. This is building on the law of attraction, and this law states that we cannot just think our way to a better world. We must align our actions with the clarity we have around our bigger goals. So also, if you have followed any kind of spiritual leader or read a book that stopped with the law of attraction and was just like, you just gotta keep the vibration, honey, then it'll be fine. They are missing the rest of the laws because you have to take action. You have to create new patterns and brain pathways if you want to achieve something new. So yes, do create a vision board of your dreams, but then find and execute actions immediately that will bring you closer to achieving them. I say it's great to meditate on your goals every day. It's even greater to take action towards them. Peter Kelly has a great quote on this: "You go first and the universe goes further." The sixth law is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. And this law is like a trigger. It means that even the smallest action can have a profound effect. Like the seed of a mighty tree holds all the promise in its tiny shell, so do you have the power within you to move mountains. On a practical level, using this law means that you consciously do tiny things that uplift and push you forward. So blast your favorite song in the shower and start your days out in the best way possible, because every small step counts. And this is also a compound effect over time. All these little habits or little changes or little vibrational shifts will lead to transmutation of energy, meaning things will shift. The seventh law is the law of cause and effect. It means that action equals reaction. This is very easy to see in physics, but it's just as applicable when it comes to your surroundings, relationships, and self-care. Taking care of and showing up for the people and things that matter to you is the best way of making sure you have someone to lean on and a place to call home if everything else falls apart. We can often see our personal blind spots manifested in our surroundings. Feng Shui is a practice that works with this law from the outside in. You shift things on the outside to shift things on the inside. There is an action and there is a reaction. You treat yourself nicely, people start treating you nicely. You put up boundaries, People speak to you differently, and so on and so forth. The 8th law, I love this one, is the law of compensation. Trust that you will get paid. This law is the basis of many a proverb. You reap what you sow, you made your bed, you have to lie in it, and more like that. But it instills trust in us that we will be compensated for our work as long as we're open to receiving in all the many ways that the universe can deliver. A way of using this law is by tipping or tithing and sending out your abundance into the world, not just to people in need, but maybe also to people who have served you in some way, but they didn't demand monetary payment. This is where I say pay your creators. If you're following people on Instagram or Facebook or anywhere in the world, sometimes you can get so much out of their content, but not ever maybe want to buy any of their services or whatever, but you can still tip them. And I say that's a really great way of tip your spiritual teachers, tip your friends, offer, and it doesn't just have to be monetary. You can help people in many ways. You can also share their content, but using this law, the law of compensation, means that you become the referral master and you connect people with the best services and service providers. And you become a magnet for good things, because who do we want to help? The people who help us. And I know that's very human level. This works on all the level, but just know that everyone you help will pay you back in ways that you don't even know about yet. The 9th law is the law of relativity, or the law of perspective. And now, as we're heading up the ladder, some of these laws might trigger you in some way, because the higher the spiritual perspective, the less emotional connection to whatever situation we might apply the law to. Because the law of relativity says that nothing and no one is inherently just good or just bad. Everything is a spectrum of expression, and there is always more than one perspective on any situation or challenge. This law is helpful when you start feeling like a failure or guilty over the amount of privilege you have. There's always someone worse off, so be grateful, and there's always a way of using your power for good. So if you have a lot of privilege or a lot of resources, build a future, fund a legacy you would like to leave. If you do not feel like you have a lot to offer the world, then you might need to shift your perspective. You might not have money to give, but you can give time. You might not have time to give, but you can refer. This is where everything happens for you, not to you, comes in. And I know this can be a super triggering statement, and I hate when people tell me that, oh, this is the best thing that ever happened to you. And you're like, no, I don't think so. I'm in all of my emotions. I can't see a way out of this. I don't want to hear this. But the law of perspective is real. Now, the 10th law is the law of polarity. And if you want to manifest something truly good, then you have to be clear on what the exact opposite thing would be. So I always say, if you want to manifest love, be really clear on what love is not. Be clear on what you don't want. And this is not on a physical or superficial level, but on a deep emotional and value-based level. Because once you understand a polarity, then you are much more equipped to understand the opposite. So instead of being wishy-washy, go to the extreme of what you do not want. Understand that level. Sometimes that is like the rock bottom level for some of us. And then the clarity of what we do want and the polarity we do want to go towards gets so much clearer. Because this law teaches us through opposition. Good things might come in ugly wrappings. Lessons you learn from picking the wrong thing makes you so much clearer on what the right choice truly is. This is the law that teaches us to learn from our mistakes. So fun, right? Now, the 11th law is the law of perpetual motion, or the law of rhythm. Everything has its time. Nothing lasts forever. This goes for people, projects, seasons, and experiences. Ride the wave you're on. If life is tough and challenging, know that it will change because it will have to. If everything is peachy, then savor this moment, but don't try to make it last beyond the natural order of things. Each stage of life has tremendous gifts to offer. Embrace each new cycle, and you'll never have a midlife crisis or feel out of sync with your path. Now, sometimes just watching the seasons change, and I'm in LA right now, so there is not a lot of season change, but nature teaches this. Summer can't last forever. Winter can't stick around for long. Being in tune with nature can really help to understand the cycles of life and the cycles of a human life and the cycles of a relationship or a friendship or a job or a project. You just need to look at it as a rhythm change. The 12th and final law is the law of gender, or the law of giving and receiving. And we are not confusing biological or any other kind of gender terms here. When we are talking about feminine, and that's the yin energy, and the masculine, and that's the yang energy, we're talking about an expression of two primal forces in the universe. One force is active, bright, outwardly focused, always in motion. The other is quiet, contained, dark, and inwardly focused. And these two forces are within every one of us, and they need to be in a form of balance in all beings. One cannot exist without the other. We don't want full-on active, bright, outwardly focused, always in motion energy, and we also don't want only contained, quiet, dark, and inwardly focused energy. There needs to be a balance, a change. One cannot exist without the other. And to work with this law, you have to recognize where in your life the balance between giving and receiving is off. You have to allow both sides in you to have their say and get their way. Yes, that was it for this episode of the Numerology Podcast. I wanted to share these 12 laws because I feel like many of them are misunderstood or misused. And I remember when I first heard about them, when I read through them, I was like, they make perfect sense to me. Also as a ladder of understanding, because once you get to the 12th law, you go right back to the law of one, the very first law, and understand how the circle is complete like that. And sometimes as people, we have to go through these motions over and over again, forgetting about the laws, forgetting about the rhythms of the universe, forgetting about the law of vibration, or forgetting about the law of cause and effect, or forgetting about the law of compensation and be like, oh, I'll never get paid, I'll never get money, I'll never get what I want. But I say, listen to the laws, see if they don't spark something in you. Maybe one of them really resonates and you're gonna maybe re-listen to that part of this podcast episode and write a few notes. See where you are in your life right now and what kind of law you feel influenced by. And maybe also if you have a few blind spots, if you have read about the laws or learned about them in any way, but there may be some aspects that you didn't get into or you didn't understand, then I hope this episode helped you. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for reviewing the Numerology Podcast. I can't tell you how happy I get when I hear from my listeners and hear who this podcast reaches and how they feel about it and how they use it. So thank you so much for that. And if you want to learn more about numerology, which is what we also discuss on the Numerology Podcast, you should go to novaleewilder.com and find out more. I'll see you in the next episode.